Hello, I'm CJ Werleman, and in this episode, we reveal how the West stole democracy from the Arabs. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. One of the least told stories about the Middle East and the cradle of Islam is how Western powers not only stole democracy from the Arabs in the 1920s, but also expelled the Arab world from the so-called New World Order, a term used to describe the proposed family of civilized nations in the aftermath of the First World War. This history, which speaks to the roots of the current conflicts and contemporary oppression in the Middle East, has not only been deliberately erased from Western textbooks, but also whitewashed by Hollywood films, including the famous Lawrence of Arabia, which narrates the military career of British officer T.E. Lawrence, a man who is glorified as a hero by the West, but denigrated as a traitor in the Arab world, where he's commonly known as the spy who divided the Muslim Ummah. Lawrence and the British Prime Minister convinced Arab leaders, specifically the Sharif of Mecca, to join the European allies in their war against the Ottoman Empire in exchange for the establishment of an independent Arab state, even though an overwhelming majority of the Arab population favoured the Ottoman Caliphate and rejected the idea of Arab nationalism.
To put this into context, 500,000 British troops were fighting the Ottomans, while the number of Arabs fighting were only around 3,500. Lawrence then realized that with such low numbers, the best thing they could do is attack the Hejaz Railway to cut the Ottomans' supply line into Arabia. Small groups would blow up sections of the track, bridges, and water towers. They would also attack some stations that were weakly defended. The British were keen for the Ottomans to be preoccupied by the Arab revolt so that the British can invade Palestine.
The final scenes of this movie would frame misconceptions about the Arab world in the minds of American and European audiences for generations to come. For it shows Arab forces conquering Damascus, with the city dissolving into wanton violence and anarchy, owing to alleged ancient Arab and tribal rivalries, which in turn leaves the British military no other choice than to step in and restore order. A not-so-subtle way of messaging that Muslims and Arabs are barbaric, uncivilized, violent and reactionary, and therefore need of an outside European force to restore order and peace. It was under this premise that British and French military mandates were installed to rule over the post-Ottoman states of Palestine, Syria, Iraq and Lebanon, as per the terms of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which carved up the Middle East for the European colonial powers. Now, while this chapter of history is well known, what is far less understood is how the West stole democracy from the Arabs during this period. The author of this brilliantly researched book says it is a story that must be told, because the highest goal of a historian is to set the record straight, so that people can free themselves from the shackles of the past and imagine a better future. And when we talk about this time in history, we are talking about the years surrounding and including the First World War, in which the Western Allies claimed they were fighting for democracy against the authoritarian axis that included Kaiser-ruled Germany, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. Now, when the war's battlefront in the Middle East came to an end, after the British and Arab forces ousted the Ottomans from Damascus, US President Woodrow Wilson promised a new Arab nation will be included in his New World Order, a family of civilized nations that would be governed under a new regime of international law known as the League of Nations. Wilson promised to end colonial rule and ensure rule by consent of the governed, as stated in point number 5 of his famous 14 points for peace and prosperity, in which he called for a free, open-minded, and absolutely impartial adjustment of all colonial claims, based upon a strict observance of the principle that in determining all such questions of sovereignty, the interests of the populations concerned must have equal weight. This promise was eagerly embraced by the entire Arab and African world, and notably the indigenous peoples of this territory were polled extensively at the war's end in early 1919 to determine their political aspirations. The survey found that Arabs wanted a total absence of colonial rule and a parliamentary democracy, given that they had enjoyed the parliamentary system of government employed by the Ottomans. This new Arab nation named Greater Syria, would have incorporated what we know today to be Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, a democratic state governed by the Arab people, for the Arab people, and without European interference. But then this happened.
On the 2nd of October 1919, United States President Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke that left him paralyzed on his left-hand side.
Wilson survived another 4 years, but resigned office immediately after suffering a stroke. But his replacement abandoned Wilson's commitment to the League of Nations, leaving the fate of the proposed Arab nation in the hands of the European powers. In 1920, a full year after Wilson left the White House, the Syrian Congress issued its Declaration of Independence, in which the Arab people stated their desire for full and absolute political independence for Greater Syria, and constitutional monarchy based on the principles of democratic and decentralized rule which safeguards the rights of minorities. The declaration also rejected French rule, while calling for a cessation of mass Jewish migration from Europe and opposition to a Zionist state in Palestine. But just months after this declaration was made, the French and British blocked the establishment of the Greater Syrian State at the League of Nations, where their European allies voted to support the forcible occupation of Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria by British and French forces. Britain wanted to gain control of the Suez Canal because it was a vital gateway to its colonial exploits in India, and the French sought greater access to resource extraction opportunities in the Mediterranean. This led to the British occupation of Palestine and the French occupation of Greater Syria, which was partitioned into states of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. The Arab dream for self-determination had been crushed, which in turn sparked two wars in the 1920s against the European colonial powers: the Iraqi revolt against the British and the Syrian revolution against the French.
The French army of the Levant that entered Syria numbered about 10,000 men, most of whom were North African and Senegalese colonial troops, and even included tanks. Faisal scrambled to assemble enough men to meet the invasion and called for volunteers in a speech at the ancient Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. I had sought to stop the advance of the enemy army by agreeing to their demands, but they betrayed us. If you want your country, then go out and defend it. The Arab force that left Damascus was a mix of Green volunteers and former Ottoman soldiers, numbering somewhere between 1,500 and 4,000 men, and was poorly equipped with leftover and mismatched Ottoman equipment.
Tragically, both the French and British invaders conquered the locals, and therefore launching a legacy of occupation, repression, and the birth of brutal dictatorships. And the British occupation of Palestine eventually gave birth to the Zionist state in 1948, and the French occupation of Syria eventually gave birth to the dictatorship of the Assad family dynasty, after the French, using a divide and conquer strategy, elevated the Alawite minority to rule over the Sunni Muslim majority. The violent destruction of the Democratic Syrian Congress by the European powers not only destroyed Arab democracy, but also split liberals and Islamists into opposing political camps, with liberals stigmatized as colonial puppets and with Islamists creating anti-liberal parties such as the Muslim Brotherhood. As they say, history doesn't repeat, but it indeed rhymes. A truism that emerged in Egypt during the Arab Spring of 2011, when the Muslim Brotherhood defeated liberal Democrats after ousting the oppressive dictator Hosni Mubarak. Now, the ultimate objective of this episode is to reveal how Britain and France unleashed division, chaos and violence in the Middle East, because once you understand this, then you can work towards fixing it, and work towards uniting the Arab world against Israel and the Arab dictatorships that coddle and protect the Zionist state. But that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJ We can't produce, sustain, and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive content and benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.